Hello and welcome to the Green Profit Academy Pros Podcast. This show digs into the challenges in growing a lawn care and landscape business while maximizing your profit. I'm Christeen.
And I'm Steve Bousquet. We are the green industry experts in profit, growth, and leadership. Hello, Christeen. How are you today?
I am good. I'm having a different year than I've had in a few years, which is okay. But it's one of those things where, business is fluid and there's always more lessons to learn.
Always learning. I think life and business that's what it is. It's constant education, endless constant education. Today's podcast is a little bit different. We're going to share and talk and discuss what our top learning or takeaways were from 2024 or even 2023 or over the past, this is going to be our 100th podcast celebration, this episode. So we're going to share what we've learned over the past couple of years and over the past 99 podcasts. Yeah. So would you like to begin?
Well, I want to say, 100th episode, super exciting. And the podcast was something that I know, Steve, I brought to you and I was like, we should do this. And you're like, meh, but I think you have a ton of fun with it.
I do. I was not for it. I was against it. Because I am a maximizer and I know that I overdo everything. And I know that it was going to take time and energy and could be a bit of a distraction. And my challenge with everything is overdoing it. So I have to just control myself with things. So that was my big concern with how much energy, time, how much of a distraction I was going to make it.
Yeah, but it's been great. I think I look back on all the other episodes that we've done, and there's just so much valuable information, and it's been a great resource to anybody that I've talked to, like on a consultation call or coaching call. And even some of my team members too, referring them to a podcast episode or just listening to the podcast as a new business or somebody who's been in business and they don't feel like they have any time to work on their business. And I just invite them, listen to the podcast. If all you have right now is time to listen while you're driving around doing business or you're at the gym or whatever it is, it's going to help move you forward. And I love the content that we've been able to bring and share with other entrepreneurs. And I hope that, it's going to change their path and their perspective for the better.
Yeah, it is, it's been fun recording them. We've had some fun guests. We've shared some new things. It's definitely opened my eyes to some different possibilities. New ways, new questions, new ways to ask questions. And, between the years that we have both been in business, plus all of the different people we've worked with and coached, you're talking over 60 years of us being in business combined time and hundreds of people we've worked with in coaching. All that experience is what's coming through on the podcast. So, it's small business, right? We've never worked corporate. I've never had, a corporate job. So you're getting real life experience right from the people who have lived it. And it's not pie in the sky stuff. It's not, experimental. This is real, where the rubber meets the road stuff. And we've been through all the trials and tribulations of owning a small business, from the financial difficulties to hiring people and firing people and having family members in the business and difficult customers and non-paying customers and bad weather and bad software and you name it. We've been through it and had to work our way through it, around it, over it, under it, whatever it took to get here. And so being able to share that and helping people, very frequently I will get 2 or 3 texts after a podcast drops. Hey, that was great. I really like this. Or when I'm on a coaching call, someone will bring up a podcast. And even one of my own team members looked up one of the podcasts and she shared with me. It was it was such a disconnect. She's like, I didn't even recognize you halfway through. It was I was listening to someone I didn't know. It was such a unique experience. So it was interesting that even some of my team members do listen to it, but looking up who they work with and who the owner of their own company is, it was kind of a new concept for them. So interesting. So yeah, 100's a big deal. Less than 30% of all podcasts ever make it to 100 episodes. So congratulations, Christine.
Yeah, you too. It was a definitely a journey made together, lots of effort. But I mean, hey, we do love to talk about business. So
we do love to talk about business. I was just thinking yesterday, I was like, oh, I just want to go somewhere and talk about business. Like, it's just my favorite topic. I know it's your favorite topic. And we get to, with our other friends, and we talk about business. I know Andrea, our friend that owns a organizing business, she loves to talk about business. And it kind of is annoying to her when she gets with other people that don't know anything about business or talk about business. She wants to talk about business. So,
yeah. Like, what do we talk about? I don't know what to talk about.
It's like, I don't want to talk about what the new fashion is or whatever else boring thing you're going to talk about. So, all right.
Lesson for me, one of the things, and I think this has come up several times, and it's one of those that I like kind of stick on the back burner. And then I'm like, oh yes, I remember you. And it relates to time management and investment. And it's one of those things that no matter what level we are, in our business or where we're at in our business journey, what we put into something, whether it's a program or a project or, leadership or whatever it is, to get us to that next level, it's what we're going to get out of it. So what we put into it is what we're going to get out of it. And that's one of those things that never change, no matter where you're at, or you have how many employees you have working for you, or don't, right? So you could be one of those little baby rock star businesses that's under $500,000, working its way up to $1 million, and it's going to be the same concept, even if you're at 10 million, 15 million, 20 million, is that focus and time management and knowing I'm only going to get out of this, whatever this is, what I put into it.
Yeah, so that could be like time, it could be energy, it could be resources, and resources could be financial. It could be investing in yourself, your own personal growth and development, like your own skill set. Also finding other people who can support you. Mm-hmm. So bringing other people on your team, finding out your strengths, their strengths, aligning strengths.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I'm like, people who know me, I love to build structure. I love systems and processes that support it. And even no matter how much systems or processes I build or those structures, when we're really focusing on leveling up or what's that next thing, and there's still that kind of discipline that I find I need to have that discipline and focus on whatever that is, or it's just going to spin out of control.
Yeah. Focus is huge. I was on a coaching call yesterday, and that was the thing. They said, can we do it? I said, as long as I can have your focus for 1 year, we can do it. I just need your focus. I can make all the math work. I can make all the logistics work. I just need your focus. I need your investment, the investment of focus. Mm-hmm. And then like 5 minutes later, they had just got I guess they subscribed to like a weekly podcast or something from someone else. And that was the podcast that they had been emailed about focus and the power of focus. So I was like, okay, there's your sign, right? Let's do this. Yeah, that's good. Time management investment. All right. Mine is one of the things I kind of discovered was how everyone says, I'm making logical decisions, or I'm going to, look at the numbers and see what makes sense and make a logical decision. And what I found is because money is so emotional and everything else is so emotional for people, that emotion seeks logic. So coaching people, there's not crying in accounting and business, but in 2018, I took a 3-week sabbatical and I visited 10 businesses, and I heard lots of amazing stories from small businesses. In 8 out of the 10 visits that I went on, there was crying involved by that business owner I visited, and it was emotional. Comeback stories, almost divorce stories, not divorce stories, almost suicide stories, not suicide stories, like almost bankrupt, not bankrupt, comeback story after, real fighting stories. So a lot of emotion in businesses. But even just day to day, people think they're making logical decisions, but it's really emotion. There's so much emotion. So what happens that I'm finding is people feel something, whether it's pride or fear of making a mistake. It's the emotion of fear. Then that emotion seeks out logic. Well, I'm going to find the numbers that support this fear, or this decision not to make this mistake, or this decision to feel successful, or feel wanted, or feel that I'm enough. Or so on the retreat, there was one of our attendees, he was struggling with the emotion. So I actually was like, I don't feel this an emotion that. I gave him a little cheat sheet of like 15 or 20 emotions, and he could copy off of that, because everybody thinks emotion is crying, but emotion could be happiness. It could be thrilled. It could be excitement. It could be, just, it doesn't have to be like sorrow, right? It could be joy as an emotion, right? And so he was using that, and he was like, okay, now I get it now. It doesn't have to be, everyone thinks it was the other side of the coin, right? You could have pride for someone. So you could just have gratitude is an emotion. So there's a lot of things that we can feel, but that's one of the things, and having people connect the emotion to the logic was kind of, and admitting it, because they're like, no, I'm a very logical person. And when I went back, and the person who always says that to me the most, when I went and looked at his Clifton strengths, he has harmony, consistency, and it's all emotion. They want not to rock the boat. Is the one that clings to the logical decisions the most. So that was a pretty interesting takeaway from 24.
So one of mine is, and this is something like we've been working on for years. I work with clients on this. And once it gets in place, it's a huge game changer, and it's that data, driven decision making. It's kind of similar, concept to what you're saying, Steve, but it's really looking at what are the numbers tell you and what's possible to make decisions around, right? So, we get a lot of stuff done. We have ambitious goals, with the team. But one of the things that really set the expectations right and the ability to achieve something was setting up these goals and milestones and action steps, and being very realistic about the facts, right? Can we do this project? Well, this project is going to take 2,000 hours. Okay, well, how many hours do we have? Well, we only have 800. So how much of that project can we actually get done? So that's one piece of it, right? So then it's adjusting the expectations and the ask or demand that we have on our team to then get something fully completed. So really leaning into that, data-driven decisions and building out the format that you need to really understand and know, are my expectations, are they too big? Is it going to support what we need now? Is it going to get us there? Should that be something we should be focusing on? Because if we only have 800 hours, is there something that we could get done now that will support us better? And then we can do this project later when we have more hours, to focus on it. Or what does that look like? So it's really changed and allowed us to make better decisions around our resources in the company, like the use of time, and also financial. How much money should we be spending on this, or what are we capable of spending on something, right? So really looking at what do we have and what can we make out of or accomplish with what we have, and then, shifting gears. And I think one of the things that really support that is taking that time of building a strategic plan, with goals and action steps and milestones and considering, is this possible? What is this going to do for us? Do we have the resources? And within small businesses, most of the answers are going to end up no. Okay, so then what can we do now, right? Or instead, or what does this look like? How can we shift our expectations or our outcome? So I think not just as a business owner, but then having those conversations with our team members can really give them some insight and sharing, all of the things that go around with those goal setting and, the vision and stuff like that support it. And then working with clients through it too, it's just given them a different perspective. They're like, well, I never looked at it like that before. I never measured it like that before. So it just really opens up some great conversations, and as well as it really adjusts what the people, the team, and the company can accomplish or what they can't. So like you say, Steve, you're not saying no forever, just right now.
Right. Yep. And my next takeaway kind of goes along with what you just shared, right? Just because it's the best idea doesn't mean you can afford it. And that's really like, yes, that is the best thing to buy, or yes, that is the best marketing plan, but you can't afford it. Or yes, that's the best piece of equipment, but how there's no way, like a bark blower. Yes, that it is the best way to apply 1,000 yards of mulch, but to pay for $120,000 trailer pulled bark blower, it'll take you 10 years. So to actually pay for that, or as an example. So just because it's the best idea does not mean that we can afford it. So that can be a hard pill to swallow for people. And sometimes you need a little bit of that's where that emotion and logic thing comes together, right? So it's do I deserve it? Sometimes we feel like I deserve it. So then I can make a logical argument for it. And even then, it doesn't mean that you can afford it. So whether it's the best logical or best emotional doesn't mean you can afford it either.
Yeah, and I think it's hard to in the industry that we serve at Green Profit Academy, working on their business models and their financials and really, getting them dialed in and profitable. The green industry loves equipment, right? And I mean, come on, like it's fun, right? Let's be honest. It's like the equipment's fun, it's cool, so
that's why equipment videos are the most watched. If you go on YouTube, people want to watch equipment videos, not business videos. They don't want to learn how to make more money. They want to watch mowers and weed whackers and how to clean curbs and how to use a snowblower. Yep.
Yeah. So it's, when it comes to equipment, it's like, it's understandable that it's emotional driven or it's exciting. And you're like, well, we're going to figure out how to get this thing to make us money. Let's go buy it. And so yes, I can see how there's like that emotional driven decision, but really looking at the facts and the numbers and running the numbers first and seeing, when can this happen? Right. Versus let's make this happen and then have to solve all the problems afterwards. We have enough problems in business. We don't need one more thing to figure out along the way.
Nope. And that goes with people too. Sometimes they're the best hire, we can't afford the people, even though they're good people, whether it's office staff or mechanics or designers, landscape designers, there's overhead people that might be the best people, but we cannot afford the overhead.
Yeah. So one of mine is, and I'm not one of those people who really look at the past that says, oh, the past is going to determine the future, right? Because I'm a true believer in our choices determine the future. But the past of what we've been through and overcoming challenges, right? It's a perspective that we've gained. It's an experience that we've had. And there's a lot of really good lessons that we can carry forward with those. So, some of those tough lessons can really help us make the right choices as we, move into the future. And I don't want to say we definitely don't want to hold on to things that stop us from moving forward, right? That give us that fixed mindset of like, oh, we hired this type of employee in the past, and they're just going to be a bad employee. We're never hiring for that position again, or so we don't want those to get us stuck, right? Those experiences, but we want to draw from them from a perspective to where we make better choices. And then also leaning into what we have created with processes, right? Like the guardrails. And I think hiring is a really good example of, why we would follow a process if we have a hiring process. And we have a great hiring process at Core. Like I love the hiring process. We've turned it over to other people in the past, and they haven't followed the hiring process. And they're like, well, it doesn't work, or, there's a bad hire or something like that, right? So I think processes are really important. Once we kind of learn lessons and figure out like what's the right way to do something, right? We can have a process to keep the guardrails in place, but then also don't forget the lessons that helped us set up those guardrails, right? So that way we don't deviate from them. And like I always tell my team, if you're not super excited about hiring this person, like you're not over the moon and giddy, they're not the right person. They could have nailed everything else, but they may not be the right person. So that's one of the things, a good example again of following a process and then building our processes that help us keep those guardrails in place from the amazing lessons we learned in the past that are going to help us move forward in the right direction in the future.
Yeah, and hiring people is one of the toughest things. And that's one of my takeaways is nothing costs me more money than can either make me more money or cost me more money than good and bad hires, right? So nothing can make me more money than good hires, and nothing can cost me more money than bad hires.
It's true. Mm-hmm. Which is why we want to stick to that, solid and true hiring process once we get that in place.
Your systems, absolutely. Yeah. So my next one is being right and making the best decision does not guarantee it will make things easy. So like doing the right thing and making the best decisions does not mean it's easy. It can actually mean it's going to be tougher. So like just making hard decisions and making the best decisions does not mean easy. Mm-hmm. It means that you might have to do more work, or you're going to have difficult conversations, or you're going to have to change things in the business that might be uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And so that is one thing I've watched and had to coach people through. And they were like, I thought it would be easier because it was the right decision. And I was like, I know, right? When we talked about it, it still is the right decision. It's just not easy.
Yeah. And I would agree is that a lot of the times the right decision and the change that goes along with it is the hardest because of the change that goes along with it, right? It's like, especially if you have, let's say, again, we'll go back to employees. You have somebody who's doing the job, right? They're holding that position. Are they the best person for that? Maybe they're not. And if they're not, if you had to make a change in that role, it's going to be hard because you have somebody that's managing it right now. It's like, do you really want to go poke the bear? Sometimes we have to poke the bear, right?
Yes.
So in order for the business to level up, in order to get where you want to go, the problems that you're having aren't going to go away. So yeah, the change that comes with the right decision, I think, is the most difficult part.
Yeah, it definitely can.
So one of mine is, and I love this one because it was something that I always truly, truly believed in, but it wasn't something that just like popped out to me that I felt was just a very important thing in business and in life. And it's around transparency, right? And transparency can show up in many different ways, in business and personal. So fostering loyalty by being honest through tough conversations is very important. And we can foster that loyalty even if we're having tough conversations or connective conversations or supportive conversations. We can foster that by being honest about things, right, in the moment. And I think that's really hard for a lot of people is, it's not always easy to say what needs to be said or just say what is really causing this disruption or this feeling or this conflict or whatever it is. So I think that transparency is really important. And it's one thing I want to say to be private, right? It's like, it's okay to be private, but it's another thing to be vulnerable, right? So privacy and vulnerability are two different things. There's things that we shouldn't share with everyone, right? But
Yes.
then there's vulnerability that can come into play to where by sharing whatever you're sharing around vulnerability, that's going to foster trust and allow the connection with the person that you're talking to happen, as well as provide context to maybe what's going on. Because otherwise, if we're not being transparent and we're being closed off, a way that we can fix that issue is to be vulnerable and share, like, hey, I have this challenge, or this is what's going on, or I know you said this, and I just want you to know that I took it this way, and that may not have been how you meant it, but I did receive it this way. And so I think that when we're vulnerable and we're sharing some context around something in a conversation, and this is what I mean by transparency, we're making that space to eliminate the assumption from the other person. Because, and I've talked about this before, humans, we're storytelling people. We tell stories in our mind. Everything that we hear, there's a story attached to it, visually in our mind. And if we're having a conversation with someone, whether it's a team member, a friend, a family member, a child, any of those relationships we have in our mind, if we're not transparent and vulnerable about some things, then an assumption can be made. And those assumptions can lead down very bad paths, right? So I think it helps really clarify the intentions or what challenges we might be experiencing in our lives. And as well as like how we're receiving or perceiving something. So I love the concept of transparency and how, yes, be private, that's okay. But also remember that vulnerability fosters trust and can eliminate assumptions that aren't going to contribute anything great to a conversation or a situation or a relationship.
Core Growth Strategies provides business growth management solutions through cloud accounting, bookkeeping, and strategic business consulting programs. Our team works with small businesses in lawn care and landscape and trade industries throughout the U.S. We increase our clients' business acumen by creating business performance transparency through financials and strategic advisement based on industry best practices and benchmarks. Our experienced team provides support, guidance, and coaching, thereby allowing our clients to connect with viable data and discover their own solutions. Core Growth Strategies programs and services are designed to get your business from where it is now to where you have always dreamed it to be. Visit us today at coregrowthstrategies.com and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Don't miss our exclusive limited time podcast special. Just mention promo code GPA Pro to any member of our team during your complimentary consultation, or enter the promo code on our site when you sign up for one of our online programs. That's promo code GPA Pro.
Yes, and knowing when, so for you have communication in your top 5, I have communication in our top 5. So our communication radar is always on. So helping people that don't have high communication, whether they're on our team or in our family, is kind of our job. So one of the things that I coach people on, there's a lot of frustration. People will be like, how come everybody doesn't think like me? Or how come I'm the one that has to always do this or that? So if you've ever, I felt like that at times, I'm sure you have, right? So just like, so I coach people around that. In that group, if you're feeling like that, you might have someone else that helps you a little bit. But in that group, that's your role. Like that's our role in that group, whatever you're feeling, whether it's you invited the people, you organized it, or you're the decision maker, or whatever you're bringing to that group that you're feeling, why can't everybody else be like that? That's your role. That's why you're in the group. That's your job in the group. And if everybody was like that, it would be a lopsided like group. It wouldn't exist probably. So just realize that that's your job. So as a communicator, that's your job, is to help people realize and have awareness around that transparency, because they'll be completely blind to it.
Yeah. And I just want to kind of touch on something that you said, because it always makes me laugh, Steve, is when we have that internal narrative, right? Where we're like, why am I the only person who ever has to, And I laugh because it's one of those things where it's like, well, would you truly be happy if somebody else was? Because are they taking up your role or your strength in that space? So that's why I kind of giggle when I hear that.
Yeah.
And I even ask myself this question. Now, Christine, would you really be happy if somebody else showed up that way? Or are you just complaining? So how happy would you really be if someone showed up and took that over?
Yeah.
So
that's your gift to the group.
Right.
Yep. That's your gift to the group. And there might be somebody complaining, how come they always do this? And how come they always do that? And it's the people that don't ever want to do that. You know what I mean? They're glad that you do it, but they still might complain about it. We call them the complainers. They complain about themselves even. They complain about everything. They complain about the weather, things they can't change. Yes. All right. My next one, and we did a whole podcast around this actually, or a good portion of it, is don't use technology to be lazy. So I think we talked about lazy sales, like clicking off emails. And I've experienced this multiple times since the podcast. And so now I'm teaching the double touch or the 2-touch sales. Like, so email it and call, email and text to let them know that you emailed it, email them and visit them, do something to let them know that you emailed. And we've been testing this. And it is crazy effective. We did it this week on Monday. We sent an email and a text out, and we had Monday 3 appointments, Tuesday 3 appointments, Wednesday 3 appointments. This was for landscape. So it is effective. We did it with 30 past clients we've done work for, and so anybody we did jobs for in 2024, we did this with 30 clients. We didn't do 100. We just did a test, a large enough data that we could test, right? 30. And 1/3 of them have already set appointments, almost 9 out of the 30. So the double touch, I'm calling it, and we're doing it, and we did it in lawn care. We got a 40% response. So the double touch is way more effective than the click email and not doing anything. So don't be lazy with technology. And I have a good friend who has another lawn care business. And, we had in 2024, my lawn care business had a very successful year, some of the best numbers we ever saw. And we do a lot of things old school. We still print out route books. So our route sheets have a picture of the house on them in full color. It has a street view. It has an aerial view. It has a map of where to treat, where not to treat. We hand our guys paper books that they flip through the day, and page by page, it tells them where to treat, where not to treat. They see the house, and we put them together, each route, and we take them apart. And it is a lot of work, but our numbers are in the top 2% of the country year after year after year. And the guy, he sent his son to visit us and look at how can we keep producing at these numbers? And, how we're putting these routes together and how much detail we take to always make sure the truck's on the right side of the road, and how we spend time to make sure the tech is always teching and not doing anything else but doing applications, like not making call aheads and routing and scheduling and fixing trucks. The tech is always doing production. That's how we get so much work done. So he's like, man, that's a lot of work to do that. And I just said, winning is a lot of work. So we wrote that on the board. Winning is a lot of work. So if we're using technology to win, that's one thing. But if we're using technology to be lazy and to get out of doing work and it hurts us, then that is something we have to re-examine. And how it came up was I got 3 calls in about a 3-week period from people whose sales had dramatically fallen off. And when we re-examined, I went through, tell me about your sales process. Well, they had gotten a new software. It doesn't matter which one. Starts with a J, ends with R. Doesn't matter which one. It's not the software. They were just clicking their proposals off and never calling anybody and never going over anything. And if you've listened to the podcast, I'll do my imitation of a sales presentation through email. Sounds like this. Dead air, right? Sounds awful. So their sales just plummeted with these clicked off sales. So I was like, that's lazy sales. You're literally hurting yourself. So stop doing that. Call the people, go see them. How did you used to sell? Well, I used to go see people and talk to them. Okay, let's go back to that. So, if you are using technology and you think you're saving time, you probably are. Continue doing it as long as you're winning with it. If you see declines in sales, declines in production, declines in employee retention, declines in your bank account, client satisfaction, then re-examine your technology use and just ask yourself, am I doing it because I'm being lazy or it's easier, or is it actually helping me win?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good point, because I love technology. I love automation. I love leveraging it. And even when I work with companies on a consultative basis and I look at where can we improve their efficiencies in the company and close that gap to generate more profit, and what does that look like? I look at the technologies that they're using and what isn't being, completely leveraged, and where are those opportunities. And I know I've been in your business, Steve, several times, and I'm like, these books, like we can, all this printing and, and I just see a full system of how, you could leverage technology and do the same thing with less effort, and even automate some stuff. And, so again, an opportunity that you could leverage to create more profit and even make that margin even more beautiful. Right.
Right.
But I totally agree, is there's companies out there that either aren't leveraging the technology that's going to highly benefit them and increase efficiency. And then there's companies that do leverage the technology, but they lose a part of the value, that unique offering, their area of innovation that they're bringing to the table, that makes the magic happen, that makes those sales amazing, or, their customer satisfaction out the roof, like whatever that is. So I totally agree to implement technology, assess it, entertain it, but test it and see, is it interfering with any value that you are bringing to the table for the people that you serve? And just be aware of it. Like, what can it derail in your company that's already great? Just don't use that piece.
Yeah. And pay attention. We use a lot of technology. I mean, we do use a lot of technology in the company, but we want to make sure, like you would think, even though we have a lot of younger techs, that they love technology. But so, and this guy I said, show me how your techs would get to the route card. Well, you open up this app, you scroll this screen, tap, tap, screen, tap, tap. So 7 screens. And they're like, yeah, if they can get the signal. So because of where they live, they have to have boosters in all the trucks. So 7 screens and all these taps to see the card that my guy's looking at. He turned 1 page. Yep. And I said, okay. So my guy turns 10 pages, so that's 70 taps on the computer during the day. And my guy turned 10 pages. And, it's an 8x11 that he can write on if there's any changes. Show me how to make a change in there. Okay, that's these screens, 4 screens later in a save, if they have the connection. So that's the other thing is, what's the best system sometimes? The one that works for your company. If they had easy internet and bigger tablets and highly technologically skilled people and a different program, then that we're having a different conversation. But, I always talk about meeting people where they're at, right? It's for us, it works for us. And so you have to kind of do where you're at. Now, like I said, just whatever you're doing, don't use technology to be lazy because you don't want to make calls or you don't want to go see people or whatever it is. Don't hurt your company by using technology.
Yeah. So,
all right.
One of the things that, and this has come up more recently, which kind of, went on my list of something to kind of appreciate in business or be aware of, is listening, right? And how important listening is. And what I've seen in talking to, people over the years, right, is there's a lot of talking going on, but there's not that much listening going on. So there's this conversation happening between two people back and forth, and it's filling some cup, right, for each of them. But really, like, what is it accomplishing? So I think in business, that's really important. If you're a leader, if you're a manager, if you're in customer service or customer facing position in any way, that listening is very important. And intentional listening, right? You're being intentional about it. You have all of your attention. You're hearing the words they're saying. You're understanding what they mean and giving them the space to share, and then coming back and addressing or even acknowledging anything that they shared with you. So I think that that's a really important piece, is to take a pause when we are having conversations with people, especially when they're presenting concerns or problems to us, and just be curious, how much are you really hearing them and listening to what they're sharing, and how quickly you could address whatever they're sharing, or the challenge, or get to the bottom of it, is going to change immensely if we really just show up and listen.
Yes. And that's my next thing, kind of flows into that. So one of the things that I've really seen and experienced is people still matter, and being liked is more important than being right. So I wrote, people matter more than being right. So when people want to be listened, they don't care about you being right. So they're trying to share what they are experiencing. So in paver sales, like Techo Block pavers or, Unilock, whatever you're trying to sell, if they're trying to share the reason they want the patio is because they have this party or a wedding coming up, and you're talking about 8 inches of base compacted at 4,000 PSI with a 2.5-inch paver, and we're going to have to do a 1-inch grade over 10 feet. And, and you're not listening about the wedding or the patio. Yes, you were right. That's how this has to be constructed, but they don't care that you're right. Because you're not listening about their dream and their vision about this wedding. And one of the things that I have learned through all my sales is people they don't know anything about patios, but they do know about relationships, right? So people are going to buy maybe 1 or 2 patios. It's like me buying a roof. I bought 2 roofs so far in my life. Well, 3 for my office. So I don't have that much experience buying roofs. I do know a little bit because I've bought 3 roofs, but very little. Not even enough to be dangerous, actually. So very, very little. But I do know a lot about relationships. So, because I have relationships all day, every day. So it's very important that I like the roofing guy and trust him and believe what he's saying, because I have more experience in that. I trusting people and liking people and listening to them and hearing what they're saying than I do in roofing material. I don't even know the language in roofing material. So if I go to a sales call and I start paver talking and talking about all this stuff that they don't even know what I'm talking about, but I'm not building that rapport, that trust in that relationship, I'm not even speaking their language. And then if I'm not listening, like you were just saying about the wedding and who's getting married and when they're getting married and what the vision of them, what if it's their only daughter? And they've been envisioning this wedding for 10 years, maybe 20 years or longer, and you're not on board with that vision, and you don't get the job and you're like, somebody undercut me. Price, it's always price. But the person who listens to this woman or husband or couple talk about the wedding and shared that vision and that dream about that patio or that job, price was irrelevant. So I'm finding a lot of times the people that are struggling and selling on price or getting like they think they're losing these jobs on prices. It's just they're not tuning. They're selling the product and the thing that they sell, and they're not listening to the client. They're right. They are selling it. This is the best compaction rate you could have. And poly sand, and that poly edging, it's the best 10 years. Awesome. But they're not plugging in. No one buys a patio for block. No one's buying block. If I could just have this block in my backyard. They're buying it for people and dreams and visions and hope, right? So listening to why people really buy anything, whether it's lawn care, right? People don't buy fertilizer. They're buying a vision of a lawn.
Yeah. Well, my husband does, but it's very much for his vision and for his grass to be even greener than the golf course next to us. So
yes, he's buying green. It's like, when we buy a drill and a drill bit, what are we really buying, right? A hole. It's the only reason you need a drill is for holes. You're really only buying holes. And, when we're buying fertilizer, we're buying green.
All right. So this is another one that I think is really important and we can lose sight of in the day-to-day because it's very easy when you're in the day-to-day of the business, whether you're the owner of the business or you're the manager in a division or you have a manager or an employee that's out there, working client facing or whatever it is, it's delegation and proper delegation. And proper delegation, if we don't do it right, it's one of those things that can make or break the business, right? Or make or break an outcome in a company or a client relationship or employee success at taking over something or following through with something or whatever that is. That proper delegation is the deal breaker right there. And when we're looking at delegation, there are several factors that come into it. But some of the things that we have to know is like, what are we delegating? Do they have access to everything that they need to in order for us to delegate to them, right? Because if they don't have access, they're not going to be able to do it. Have we outlined the expectations of what we are delegating and let them know, what does success look like, right? How is this supposed to happen? When is this supposed to happen? Is there a due date? Is there anything that is going to stop you or derail you or interfere with you achieving this? Right. So just some very specific questions. And then also, as we're going through it, is there any part of this that you don't understand or that you haven't learned how to do? Right. So just being very specific, asking questions and, outlining this delegation to this person, because if we don't delegate something effectively, it's either going to come back to us or there's going to be a huge fire. And once we start looking into it and go, how did this happen? We're going to find out, something wasn't properly delegated and we could have avoided all of this. And I have myself and my company have stepped in this to where it was just a little bit where it was like, that wasn't properly delegated, but it didn't have a huge impact. Like, let's go back and fix this, all the way to hundreds of hours spent on fixing something because it wasn't properly delegated, right? So really looking at, delegation has a cost, and it could either be something that generates profit or takes it all away from you, whether it's time or money.
Yeah, it's not that easy to do, the delegation. And so with the delegation, I have, and almost right behind yours there, sharing expectations, outcomes, and timelines. And that is one of my things that I was not good at. And once I started understanding that, my delegation got, so people like, delegate, what does that mean? It's like shared expectations, outcomes, and timelines. That's all delegation is like. And so what do I expect you to do? What's the outcome? What's the result I expect? And in what timeline? And really that was as simple as that. And because I don't lead with executing, I really can't tell you exactly how to get it done. So if you need me to tell you how to get it done, I probably made the wrong hire. So when I hire people, it's more like, okay, you tell me how, you're going to fill this role for me. Because if I have to tell you how to do it, you can't really work here. I don't hire people like that. I hire people who are already have either I can get them trained or somebody in my company is going to train them. But that's why I have managers or trainers for that. But I can't train you to do things. But I can give them the timeline, outcomes, and expectations. But that's the thing. And then I have to train my managers to do the same thing, give them expectations, timelines, and outcomes. That's all delegation is. It's not that complicated. It's just taking the time, having your form. What are my expectations? What's the outcome look like? And what's your timeline? If you did that, you're already 80% better than any manager in America. Literally, there is a desperate need for managers in America right now. And if you literally just did that, you're ahead of 80%. They get confused. It's not that confusing. And people, your team will be like, oh, he just shared the expectations, told me what the outcome needs to look like, and gave me the timeline. They will be so thankful instead of wondering all these things. Okay, my next one is onboarding is the key to relationships at work, home, and in life. So we had a very basic onboarding for 10 years. And then we kind of ramped it up a little bit. I took some Christeen stuff, and then we even ramped it up even more, a whole nother maximizer, right, level. And we made it even way more robust. And we have our 1,000-day development plan. And we even have it even now more robust with our training development. And it is key to retaining people and getting people up to speed. And it's like the delegation. So it doesn't come back to us, right? So once they learn it, they have it. And, if you follow the podcast, you hear me talk about practicing. If Tom Brady has to practice, I think my team can practice. If the Kansas City Chiefs have to practice, I think my team can practice. If Michael Jordan had to practice, my team can practice. So one of the things is have your team practice stuff. And onboarding should be in the onboarding. And the other part of our onboarding is what we call is reboarding. So as we started a new season, we go through the onboarding, certain parts of the onboarding. Again, everybody in the whole company goes through it to refresh, remind, and renew.
Yeah, and I would agree. It's we can work so hard or even pay a lot of money to an outsourced hiring company, right? That to get us the right people. But then once they arrive, and we've seen this, we've talked to other professionals who have shared this, like every story I've ever heard, pulling it all the way back to when we ever started talking about this, was we work so hard to get these great employees, and then we don't onboard them properly. It's like, oh, we're here, baptism by fire, done, right? And it's like we could lose these people because we're not investing in the time of bringing them in and supporting the journey for them to be successful and really adapt the culture and the processes and the way we do things in our company, so they're doing their best. And I think that as managers, as entrepreneurs, that's an obligation of ours. If we're going to hire people, it's because changing jobs or taking on a new job is one of the most stressful things in life, next to, losing a job, right? Buying a home, getting married, having a baby, or losing somebody that we care about, right? So it's up there in those high stressors. So if somebody's going to invest in interviewing with us and coming on board and, choosing us over other opportunities, it's really our job to ensure that they're supported in the best way through this journey of this new role. And they could be with us forever if we do it right. And I think this is where retention comes into place, is the people who really went through and onboarded somebody properly. And I've even seen it in my company. We have the onboarding process Steve talked about. The people who went through the process properly are still here. They're our longest term employees. Some of the people that we've had turnover with, there was bumps in the road with their onboarding. Somebody didn't follow the process properly, or, so we find that can really turn away employees that we've invested in to get on board, and, just have not the most positive experience for them to reflect on, as they're joining the company. So very important. I think that that's a great lesson. And it's, again, another change. If you can make that in your company or start working on that, it's going to be a game changer for any company.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. It's huge. It is huge. All right. So my last takeaway is, even though I've been doing this now since I started Profit First in 2016, we fumbled and bumbled, finally got it dialed in 2018. And then since 2018, we had it implemented, it completely changed. But even just fumbling and bumbling, we have grown by doing Profit First, and I have it in a chart. You can see, and if you're listening, you won't see my hand gestures, but the chart is like this. It kind of goes in this line, and then we started Profit First, and that jumps up like these giant steps. And we went from 2.2 to $5.5 million in 8 years, and the money was always there to grow, right? So that is my takeaway, is this is now a tried and true, like life, real system of cash management. But it's also, I call it my freedom system, because if I'm not here, my team knows what to do. And it is a growth system because the money is always there. And it's not like, oh, when you get bigger, it's worse. It is not. The percentages are staying the same. So it is really a tried and true system. Follow the percentages, you follow the system, and it keeps supporting the company. And it's not, a money grab for Steve, the owner. The table keeps getting bigger for more employees, and, the plates get bigger for my team. So that is like the big takeaway. When I saw that chart printed up, and the steps and the growth and how consistent it was, proven over and over again, it was just visually mind-boggling.
Yeah. Excellent. Good takeaways and insights.
So if you don't have the Profit First for Lawn Care and Landscape Businesses, buy the book today. It can change your life.
It's the feedback of what's in there and what people have implemented has been great. And there's lots of tools, because I couldn't have done it without giving you all the tools, for each step of the way. But Profit First implementation in a company is going to change that company's ability, on what they're going to be able to do when it comes to growth in the future. Absolutely.
Yeah. And, it sounds, if you had told me that in 2016, 17, that was like a moonshot. And it was a lot of work, but it was, it feels seamless because the cash flow was always there. The percentages were always dialed in. Things were always, they felt right. We never felt like we were out of bounds. It always felt like it was real. And we never felt like it was a house of cards. My team always knew what the budget spend was. I think there was a confidence in the company, on the management team, always knowing that this was not, we weren't waiting for the other shoe to fall. Matter of fact, it was the opposite. We were constantly building this strength, a foundational strength in the company.
Yeah.
And as much as the Clifton strength helps with retention, I know that that financial foundation helps with the retention of the company.
Absolutely.
So, kudos to Profit First. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on our 100th episode. Congratulations again, Christeen. And we look forward to you joining us on the next episode.
Thank you so much. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Green Profit Academy Pros Podcast,
the show that digs into the challenges of growing a lawn care and landscape business while maximizing your profit.